Brian Barrett is headed out on a hot date.
After months of talking online, he's finally going to meet his mystery girl.
But online dating has its risks.
And for Brian, the risk is life-threatening.
To solve the case, investigators must follow the clues to find the killer hiding in plain sight. On Sunday morning, September 17, 2006, in the small city of Clarence, New York, a coworker finds Brian Barrett shot dead in his truck.
He approaches the truck and he can't believe what he sees. Brian's body is in the driver's seat.
When forensics and homicide detectives arrive on the scene, they're already at a disadvantage. It seems Brian has been dead for 2 days, meaning he was shot when he left work on Friday night.
Brian was the last one to leave Friday night, and he punched out at exactly 10:16 p.m. So there are no witnesses. He's been shot twice in the upper torso and once in the neck, but there's very little physical evidence. There's no powder residue, which you would find if the shooting happened at very close range. And there's no shell casings around the vehicle either.
Brian's parents were away on a weekend camping trip. And while they were away, Brian was supposed to feed their cat. When they get home, they find something wrong. The cat bowl is empty. This is not like him. Brian is usually so responsible.
They try his cell and get no answer. Now they're getting worried. By the time detectives show up on their doorstep, they already suspect that their son might be in danger. It's never easy to break the bad news to family members. Brian's parents are devastated at his death. They can't imagine who would have wanted to hurt their son.
He's an aspiring industrial arts teacher studying at Buffalo State College, and to make ends meet, he works part-time at a tool factory. Brian works at the tool factory with a buddy named Tom Montgomery. Aside from the job, Brian and Tom share a mutual enjoyment of online gaming sites and chat rooms. In one of the chat rooms, Tom meets a young woman calling herself Tall Hot Blonde. He checks out her profile and likes what he sees. In return, he sends her an old picture of himself at age 18 in his military uniform. The young woman's name is Jessie. She's from West Virginia. Jessie and Tom begin a relationship that quickly becomes a steamy cyber sex affair.
Jessie sends Tom love letters, and she also sends him red thong underwear, which he keeps in a box in his closet.
Tom soon finds he's happier online than in his real life, and really wishes he were his 18-year-old self in love with Tall Hot Blonde.
Tom spends hours alone on his computer chatting with Jessie. He loses interest in his other activities and even old friends.
At one point, he writes himself a note. Tom ceases to exist and is replaced by an 18-year-old battle-scarred Marine who is moving to West Virginia to be with the love of his life.
This is delusional behavior. And Tom's wife, Cindy, is not impressed.
One evening, Tom's daughter is on the family computer when an instant message pops up from Tall Hot Blonde. So she shows her mom. It doesn't take Cindy long to read through the string of passionate notes between Tom and his online lover, and then she reads the mention of the red thong. Now she knows everything, and she has a box of love letters and Jesse's underwear as proof.
Cindy then sends a scathing message to Tall Hot Blonde about her husband's deceit. She also posts a recent family photo and explains, "This is my husband, Tom. We've been married since 1989. He's 46 years old."
As you can imagine, Tall Hot Blonde is pretty upset that her online beau is not who he says he is. Jesse connects with another man in the same chat room to confirm Tom's true identity. This guy's handle is Beefcake. His real name is Brian Barrett. As Beefcake, Brian confirms that Tom is a married family man and much older than his online image.
Jessie is furious. She says Tom should be put in jail for pretending to be young.
Before long, Brian and Jesse fall into their own full-blown online romance. Meanwhile, Tom Montgomery is beside himself. His marriage is a mess, and his fantasy girlfriend is moving on with a younger man who just happens to work alongside him in the tool factory.
Brian can only imagine what it would be like to meet his new lover, Tall Hot Blonde, in person. But in the world of online romance, things aren't always as they seem. And murder is just a click away. September 17th, 2006. Detectives search the parking lot around the truck where Brian Barrett has been found shot to death in the driver's seat.
One officer picks up a peach pit that he sees on the ground nearby. It could have been tossed there by anyone, but he picks it up and takes it into evidence anyways. Brian's cell phone is in the truck, and when police look at the call log, they notice a high volume of calls to a number in West Virginia. They also question co-workers who tell them that Brian was corresponding with a woman online who called herself Tall Hot Blonde. He was on his way to meet her in person.
A quiet young man in real life. Online, Brian goes by the name Beefcake. He's having a virtual romance with Jessie, a young woman who calls herself Tall Hot Blonde.
Brian's older co-worker, Tom Montgomery, is also fixated on Jessie.
And Jessie still connects with Tom, even though now it's clear he's much older than she is, and for a while they rekindle their affair. The rivalry between Brian and Tom in the chat room increases, and at one point Brian logs in as Tall Hot Blonde just to push Tom's buttons. Adding insult to injury, Brian and Jessie gang up on Tom. They call him an old man who chases after teenagers online.
Co-workers at the tool factory where Brian and Tom work are starting to notice some tension between Tom and Brian. Their fantasy world is spilling into the real one.
Things finally come to a head when Brian brags that he's driving to West Virginia to meet Tall Hot Blonde in person.
At 10 p.m. on Friday, Brian Barrett punches out his last shift before the weekend.
He's on his way to West Virginia to finally meet his online girlfriend.
But before he can even start his truck, three shots end his life.
Computer forensic analysts piece together Brian's online persona. When they crack his hard drive, they retrieve long files of chat room messages. Brian's online romance with tall, hot blonde is fully revealed, including cybersex and the exchange of provocative photos.
During interviews with Brian's co-workers, police discover another name linked to this internet affair. Tall Hot Blonde has been sharing her internet affections with another chat room user known as Marine Sniper.
Computer forensics identify Tall Hot Blonde as 18-year-old Jessie Sheeler from Oak Hill, West Virginia. Detectives in Buffalo call Jessie late at night and talk to her on the phone. They also reach out to authorities in West Virginia to make sure that Jessie's not in any immediate danger.
When police knock on Jessie's door, they're greeted by her mother, Mary, who says that her daughter is away.
But detectives back in Buffalo traced that phone line during that late-night call. And they're certain they were speaking to Jessie at her home.
West Virginia sheriffs go back to the house, and this time her mother breaks down and confesses. Mary Sheeler is Tall Hot Blonde.
In a lurid case of online adultery and deception, no one is who they seem. Beefcake and Marine Sniper both fell for an 18-year-old calling herself Tall Hot Blonde. In fact, she's Mary Sheeler, a 45-year-old married mother of two in West Virginia. And now Beefcake, aka Brian Barrett, is dead.
It seems this murder investigation couldn't get any more bizarre. And then police find out exactly how far Mary Sheeler would go to get a little virtual excitement.
"22-year-old Brian Barrett is leaving his part-time job late one Friday evening in 2006 when he shot 3 times in his truck.
Brian was shot 3 times from a distance. This kind of pinpoint shooting through glass takes training. Brian's co-workers tell police that they believe Marine Sniper is 46-year-old factory employee Thomas Montgomery.
Brian and Tom Montgomery were once friends through work, but now they're locked in a bitter rivalry over the Tall Hot Blonde from West Virginia.
Now it turns out that Tall Hot Blonde is 45-year-old Mary Sheeler. Mary breaks down and confesses that she's not only Brian's online love interest, she's also Tom Montgomery's.
Mary is a housewife, and she's the mother of a 16-year-old daughter named Jessie, who's an outgoing softball player in Oak Hill. But Mary is incredibly bored, and she finds her life online much more exciting than her real one. She steals her daughter's identity and goes so far as to snap candid photos of her and post them for her male followers under the name Tall Hot Blonde. One of those followers is Beefcake in upstate New York. The other is Marine Sniper.
Detectives bring Tom Montgomery, aka Marine Sniper, in for questioning. He admits to his online obsession with a fantasy girl he's never met, but he denies having anything to do with Brian's shooting.
Computer forensics helped detectives map out the love triangle between Mary Sheeler, Tom Montgomery, and Brian Barrett. They can't seize Mary or Tom's computer without a warrant, so they go back into Brian's chat stream and try to find more evidence against them. When they look back on the chat stream, they see that Mary wasn't at all happy to find out that Tom was a 46-year-old man and not the 18-year-old handsome young Marine he portrayed himself to be. Mary also knew how furious Montgomery was about his rival, Brian.
There's a message from Tall Hot Blonde saying she has angered Marine Sniper, and Brian better be careful. But even with this online trail of evidence, police can't arrest Mary. Using her daughter's identity online may be morally offensive, but it's not illegal.
Detectives arrest Tom Montgomery for the murder of Brian Barrett.
They confiscate his computer, so now they can read his entire online history.
That case was centered around a love triangle that was internet-based.
His chat logs helped them piece together the online love triangle that became an obsession for all three of them.
Try to piece the case together, like what really did happen.
They follow the timeline over a year. For Tom, it looks like he spiraled down into a state of raging jealousy.
It's hard to say if traditional law enforcement techniques would have broken the case without the computer forensic evidence.
Tom Montgomery admits to detectives that he's in love with the woman he knew as Tall Hot Blonde. Police learned Montgomery is a trained sniper, but he was never deployed to a war zone during his time in the Marine Corps. They search his house, and they find an owner's manual for an M1 rifle. They also find some old family photos, and in the background of one is a gun cabinet with an M1 carbine inside. Detectives also find conclusive DNA evidence that places Tom Montgomery in the parking lot near Barrett's truck. They see from the chat room transcripts that Montgomery has nicknamed Tall Hot Blonde Peaches. When they analyze the peach pit found near Barrett's truck, the DNA matches perfectly to Montgomery.
Tom Montgomery is charged with the murder of his 22-year-old coworker, Brian Barrett.
Even though Tom Montgomery fired the gun that killed Brian, police don't believe he's the only one who should be held responsible for his murder.
On November 7th, 2006, Tom Montgomery is charged with the murder of 22-year-old Brian Barrett.
After months of bitter conflict with his younger coworker and romantic rival, he is a man consumed with jealousy.
But for the detectives, the case is not yet closed. Now they try to build a case against Mary Sheeler, who's already facing real-life consequences for online actions.
Mary's daughter, Jessie, breaks all ties to her mother. She moves in with other family members while she goes to college. Mary's husband divorces her. This has been a classic case of manipulation of Montgomery by Mary Sheeler, and detectives want to see her charged.
But according to the district attorney, she didn't break any laws. Incredibly, it's only after he goes to jail that Montgomery learns that the object of his online obsession was, in fact, a 45-year-old mother of two.
Brian Barrett died never knowing the truth about tall, hot blonde. He had fallen for someone who didn't even really exist.
His parents pursue civil suits against both Tom Montgomery and Mary Sheeler. But nothing comes of it, and Mary goes free.
Everyone was lying except Brian Barrett, and yet he was the one who paid the ultimate price.
In the virtual chat room, Jesse once wrote to Marine Sniper, "I love you always and forever." And Tom Montgomery replied, "I have never felt this way." Neither of them would ever feel this way again.